Explained by the Billy Meier contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Ascended Masters, see also Great White Brotherhood, see also Saint German. Contact Report 055.
Especially the human being on Earth is still unable to be independent and to develop independently due to the traditional false teachings and subjugations of every kind and form. He is in this regard not even half reasonable. Although he is repeatedly taught the truth that in every respect he alone is responsible for all events that affect all areas of his life, he wants to live on in his old heresy forms and make higher spirit forms responsible and superior to himself, while still committing such sacrilege that it already degenerates into unreality, for he dares to elevate earthlings to the status of masters, to whom he assigns near perfection and whom he powerfully sets above himself, but unreal and obstructive of evolution, if not self-destructive. Further developing believing misguided spiritual and semi-spiritual directions live in the mad delusion of having solved the riddle by speaking of spiritual hierarchy and meaning energies. But these are no further than the others, because truthfully, they seek the powers behind the hierarchical powers, which are well to embody universal energies, which, however, are in truth deceased Earth humans, and also remain it, which also never are able to ascend to those hierarchical powers as the Earth human imagines this.
Do you mean, for example, Maria, Mary, Gautama, Maurya, Kuthumi, Saint-Germain, and others, as they are called here on this representation?
Certainly. These are all deceased human life forms, which at their time had an average level of consciousness, like the average human being on Earth today.
Here on this representation of the spiritual hierarchy of our planets. So you say, like Asket and Svath, that this is all nonsense?
Of course, sure, for these things have been created by human foolishness and other related factors to these absurd assertions. But mankind on Earth does not want to be instructed in this matter, for in his illogicality, he lives in the belief that everything he conceives of and assumes is logic. If he believes himself to be more knowledgeable than the truth itself, and believes in his ignorance to be truly knowledgeable.
Ashtar Sheran of Ashtar Sheran, Rathasaran, Atarsaran, Arusik C. also contactee, Herbert Victor Spee C. also extraterrestrials, Giza intelligences, Abatheth C. also Thule Society. Contact Report 034.
I have other questions in store, such as a question about a certain Ashtar Sheran. Do you know anything about him and his followers?
I know the name very well.
Then talk. What's it all about?
I do not want to talk about that.
For what reason? We have some writings from a group in Berlin who are dealing with this Ashtar. What about you not wanting to talk?
I can explain the facts to you, but only for you. Officially, I am only allowed to make a few statements.
Then at least give these.
I already said that we know the name very well. But we also know of the writings you mentioned, and more of various other things. Despite all our efforts, which we have been doing for years, we were not able to connect with these life forms. We could neither find them in the places mentioned, nor ever locate them. We searched countless systems of normal time and countless dimensions for them, but nowhere was there a clue from them. Everything is very mysterious, and interestingly enough, the traces from all systems of this and other times and from all dimensions lead back again and again to the Earth, especially to Germany. There, the traces bundle together and concentrate in a very specific place and on a very specific entity. This is a center of a very powerful secret organization, which you certainly do not know and which calls itself the Thule or Eris Society. 80. In years of work, we have not been able to clarify why all this is so, why we continue to research in this relationship. However, it is absolutely clear that all impulses undoubtedly emanate from this center. The initiators of these impulses possess great knowledge and many powers. They are also in possession of few primary telepathic powers and many kinds of knowledge about extraterrestrial technologies, events and about extraterrestrial intelligences, etc. We have established with absolute certainty that they transmit this knowledge through primary telepathy via impulsives and thus influence many Earth humans who are sensitive to it. But we have also established with absolute certainty that in the originators of these impulses, a goal prevails with the aim: preservation and elevation of the white race on this earth from the descendants of the Aris race. Up to the present time, we have not yet been able to clarify what the meaning of the whole should be, and which actual powers are hidden in the originator. Everything is very well shielded through powers that are very difficult to penetrate. At any rate, one thing is certain: the primary telepathically radiated impulses are captured by various groups of humans and recorded in writing. These are sometimes very good transmissions and explanations that come astonishingly close to the truth or even stated in fact. But the reason for this was so far inscrutable and unclear. However, we have certain values about it, which I am not allowed to name officially because they do not yet give an overall picture. However, it is clear that everything is concentrated around the Thule Aris Bund, but where it is actually controlled from is still unclear. Traces of this lead into a foreign galaxy, and it seems that behind the Ashtar Sheran group, there is even more than what we currently know, and that it is also quite evil. Surprisingly, the writings mentioned contain an enormous amount of knowledge about valuable and good things, and about facts that are quite unknown on the Earth. Mixed in with these truths, however, are also very strange, unreal and untrue, as well as quite negative and evil lies, and things that seem like an evil foreign body in the block of good. Thus, for example, gross falsehoods are interspersed, such as the naming of false contact persons who appear or have appeared on the scene in a fraudulent form. These are also immediately noticeable as evil foreign bodies and do not make any sense in their naming. It could not be clarified so far by us why these falsehoods are interspersed and asserted as truth, and what is the actual and, quite obviously, very malicious purpose of the whole. On the whole, it is certain that the primary telepathic transmissions are very valuable and sometimes even truthful in relation to things that appear unusual to the earthly man, but to which the evil falsehoods maneuvered in do not rhyme in any way. The whole thing simply makes no sense, for the logic of the very many truths is interestingly overplayed again by an unusually great illogicalness and falsehood. It is undoubted that the primary telepathic impulses of truth-seekers were and are partly truthfully recorded in written form, because the persons doing this are or were very truthful. But it is incomprehensible that the real truth is in short again destroyed and made questionable by untruth as well as by lies and falsehood.
Is it possible that perhaps some alien people have their hands in the game? You spoke of the Thule Aris Society, and of another galaxy, or of the Aris Allies. Aris was an alien after all.
I am not allowed to give any official information about that yet.
Contact Report 036.
Adolf Hitler had succumbed to a delusion of power and was also maliciously abused by the Giza intelligences, with the old Thule Society playing a not inconsiderable part in this, which, however, cannot be transferred to the society of the same name of the new form.
You already said that. You have already spoken about this society before, in connection with Ashtar Sheran, or whatever his name is. It is said that this Sheran also transmitted a novel-like book, as it was explained to me, in which it is said that his clan took the dear Moses on board a beamship about 3,500 years ago. The 10 Commandments were then given to him by these. In addition, this Sheran also claims that the events of Fatima can be traced back to his clan. You once gave some hints about these things, but you did not express yourself very clearly because you do not have exact certainty about these events. But you promised me you'd enlighten me if you could figure it out. I am now interested in whether the then Thule Society in Germany is somehow connected to this Sheran tribe, and whether it has anything to do with the Giza intelligences.
Your questions brought up a series of explanations I was going to give you today anyway. A few days ago, through painstaking research and surveillance, we were able to gain a clear understanding of the fact that Ashtar Sheran actually exists, and that the only reason we could not recognize him was because he fraudulently wrapped himself in this name. A part of his real name is Arusik, along with another sequence of names, and he is a cousin of the Supreme Giza Intelligence. On their behalf, he controlled the old German Thule Society, in which he introduced 2 strong telepathic factors, but which also influenced many Thule Society members and various outside groups on a telenotic basis, including those who received the pseudo-messages of Ashtar Sheran. Sheran's machinations in this regard continue today and will continue in the future, but no longer in connection with the reorganized Thule Society.
Now I understand all sorts of things, but you just mentioned a word I don't know. You said telenautical. What is that?
Telenautical simply means telenosis or telenothy.
This is a bohemian forest for me. I really do not know what that is. I have never heard that word before.
You know hypnosis, which is based on and built upon objective and acoustic influences. 41. In contrast to hypnosis, telenosis does not require any optical or acoustic influences, but only certain high-frequency oscillations, which are transmitted inaudibly to humans and otherwise undetectable by means of high-tech apparatus and devices. For example, radio, telephone, television, and other communication and transmission apparatus and devices, although impulse telepathy also belongs to this.
Tell me what Moses and Fatima have in connection with Sheran. You did not give me any information about that.
In fact, I did not. The events of Fatima actually trace back to these intelligences, as do many similar events. All we knew so far was that the Giza intelligences were responsible for all these events, and that everything was done by Ashtar Sheran or by his command. This has only been known to us for a few days, since we were able to unveil the secret around him. The case with Moses Behaves is somewhat different than was explained, because the 10 Commandments, of which there were actually 12, were not given to him in a spaceship, but actually in that place which is handed down to you in the Bible. In this statement, the truth was handed down to you as it really happened, at least as far as the place of the event is concerned.
Contact Report 038.
This time, I will give you explanations that Sim Yase has spoken about with you in relation to the events surrounding Ashtar Sheran, who in truth was named Arusiak, and who carries further names yet. Arusiak, alias Ashtar Sheran, and so forth, is, as far as the fulfillment of his apportioned mission is concerned, the leader of an assembly of intelligences consisting of thousands of individuals, who, until 15 years ago, stood under the direct command of the world control-seeking Kamagol. Arusayak and Kamagol are, according to their blood association, cousins, as it is named by you. But Kamagol is the leader and ruler over a splinter group of many thousands of descendants who, in earlier times, were separated, which means that this group had been separated by those powers who, earlier, possessed the control over your earth and whose highest leader was an Ishwish. As it has always been, however, power struggles and lust for power also ruled among them, as unfortunately is characteristic of the human life form in its course of evolution. One of the most greedy for might at that time was Arusam, who, with a group of many thousands, broke away from the majority of the celestial sons who had already become peaceful, and went his own way with the mind to make the earth and its life forms subordinate. His way of obtaining his goal was that of lies and deceit, of misleading and false teaching in the form of cultic false teachings, which he was able to very skillfully weave into the religious teachings. Through emissaries and earth humans who had succumbed to him, he mixed these teachings among the earth humans, whereby he soon won many followers of his false teachings. It was primarily the gypsies on the Nile and in the further vicinity of the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea who fanatically hung on his false teachings and began to spread them. But the Hebrews, as they were, later freed themselves from this rule, as Arusam had to cede control to his successor, who was then named Jehovah, and so forth, in the tongue of the earth humans. Having grown in the number of their people, the Hebrews created their own might and elected themselves as chosen ones. They assumed for themselves the right to be qualified for world control and to be worthy as chosen people, although they were never a people, rather only a low human group of gypsies of all kinds of colors and races who had come together. But since the events of that time, they unjustifiably presented themselves as the first ones, as the pre-entitled to rule the earth, faithful to the examples who wanted to bring the whole earth into bondage. Thereby they became renegades, as also were their models, who now from their side had to seek new ways to realize their wishes for power. They found these ways then also through Kamagol I, who succeeded Jehovah, who had assumed the name of an Ishwish. Like no ruler before, Kamagol I forced all terrestrial religions into the frame of blood-demanding cults, which, unfortunately, were able to be maintained on the earth up to the current time. In spite of many efforts of the righteous celestial sons, they were not able to prohibit his evil machinations. Therefore, he could grasp the cultic religions around himself more and more and control the world. Mighty in many kinds of technical and consciousness-related resources and powers, Kamagol's assembly was able to force the earth humans into its power and completely lead them into a cultic religion confusion. However, also Kamagol I could not assert his position of power because, after he had created for himself a center and a headquarters deep under the surface of the pyramids of Giza, he was overthrown and disempowered by his own son, Kamagol II. In many things he was even more malicious than his father, which he also soon proved through the introduction of monstrous mass killings of the earth humans. Very many bloody events on the earth, which were carried out through the cultic religions, in truth, concern the will and the influencing of Kamagol II. He and his assembly have become known in insider circles as the Giza intelligences. This is because they maintain their actual command center there and guide all events from there. Many kinds of efforts were undertaken to prepare an end for this command center and the driving force of this malicious assembly, yet that has basically failed up until now, because they have secured everything so much that effective alterations could only be obtained with malicious illogical force, which is not allowed to us and all others who are oriented regarding these facts. Kamagol I now selected one of his cousins as the authority over a group of thousands of individuals which had a quite special mission to fulfill, or would have had. This task was essentially based on the telenotic guiding of various groups of humans of Aryan lineage into certain paths, in particular in Germany, America, Argentina, and Brazil, in order to provide unconscious assistance for Kamagol's plans. During the first time period, Arusek, therefore Ashtar Sheran, and whatever his other names may yet be, followed these orders unconditionally, so thereby Kamagol allocated further great power. But in the course of time he obtained many kinds of understanding and modified his behavior. Until then, he acted only according to the orders of Kamagol, so he only modified his tactic unnoticeably and thereby influenced, firstly, his assembly, which he indeed required. By and by he obtained their trust, and they acknowledged him as their actual leader. So it was an easy game for him to, by and by, include the obtained understanding of the truth and also to act according to it, even with the knowledge of his assembly. With their acquiescence, they loosened themselves from the control of Kamagol and formed a new splinter group. That happened in the Earth year 1933. Since then, Arusiek followed his mission, imposed on him by Kamagol, to a degree, and transmitted his messages to various Earth humans using telepathic impulses. Because, however, he is not yet completely conscious of the truth, in his messages arise contradictions to which, however, no attention may be given. In various matters of the truth he is yet inexperienced, so he has to learn it first. Nevertheless, however, his messages in the principal matters are extremely faithful to the truth and stimulate joy. But on the basis of security for his assembly and himself, in certain things he gives unclear and not correct, and therefore false, statements, which is, however, entirely excusable. So, statements about his place of residence also do not correspond to correctness which, however, affects no severance with his obtained love of truth. This is a security for him and his assembly, so that they do not come into conflict with Kamagol's assembly. In spite of all of our possibilities, we have not succeeded in finding his whereabouts. Apparently he and his assembly have received, through some sort of circumstances, very high and valuable knowledge of security measures which they make use of, and that we are not able to investigate with all our possibilities. But that is not of significance, because those kind of occurrences often happen if individual groups break off from a forceful control and seek the way of the truth. So Arusiak, with his assembly, can hold up in a very greatly distant galaxy, or even in another dimension, where they are absolutely secure from Kamagol's grasp. However, they are able to do their mission in spite of that because their consciousness-based and technical possibilities make it possible to bridge all distances in space and time. This is the state of these matters that I had to explain to you.
Quetzal, that is of more value to me than any material fortune. Your explanation says, therefore, that Arusiak has broken away from the Giza intelligences and has made himself autonomous. That is monstrously favorable. It is only a shame that you did not already discover that earlier. The previous meager statements from Sim Yase have unfortunately created a somewhat worse picture.
It is known to me, yet we did not want to leave you and the interested ones in uncertainty, that Arusiak belonged to the Giza intelligences. But we can just now transmit to you the truth known to us up until now, because we know it somewhat better. Still to mention, at any rate, is that, in spite of everything, a great factor of uncertainty exists in regard to the probity of Arusiak, alias Ashtar Sheran, alias, subsequently, it cannot be said with certainty that an intrigue and falseness is not still indeed hidden, in the end, behind the present manner of behavior. Ashtar Sheran's change of attitude provides, namely, some puzzle.
Contact Report 044.
But what about this Ashtar Sheran? Is he still in the area?
He is very well, but his activity has finally ceased. However, he is not so close that one could still call it in the area. Moreover, we found out that he poses a certain danger, which we have not yet been able to determine.
Also good. But what about the young journalist who wrote or simply reproduced all these Sheran reports? I was able to read these reports in the meantime because they were made available to me.
The man is not what he is described as. He was never even outside the earthly atmosphere, and even less did he experience the things he reported. All his statements are pure fantasy.
Then I do not understand that Ashtar Sheran should actually exist anyway, if this man invented everything.
That is also very easy to explain. Ashtar Sheran had a real visionary influence on him when he was still in doubt and unfortunately ignored various things, such as the later total elimination when he completely renounced the Giza intelligences. Thus the man, if you want to call the person that, came to mix certain still vague memories with his boundless imagination and to spread them as truth. All these things only became known to me less than 9 days ago, because the clarification of these things was a small part of my task that has kept me in suspense for so long.
Contact Report 105.
You and the whole task are still very vulnerable to other elements, earthly as well as extraterrestrial, the latter being related to the Bafaths, Ashtar Sheran, etc.
I can imagine that. But these Sheran types, etc., are certainly not as mean and dangerous as the Giza twerps, Giza intelligences.
Do not let yourself be deceived, because the dangers are sometimes even greater, because these elements do not have to take into account that their existence becomes known.
Contact Report 145.
Anatol is a man who was used by a group of extraterrestrials as a contact person to pursue a very specific educational work on Earth. He stands, or rather, stood, in contact with humans of that group, who are under the leadership of a certain Ashtar Sheran. These Ashtar Sheran people previously worked together with the Giza intelligences and were, therefore, expelled by the Pleiadians from the planet Earth and were deported. For the exact data on this, one would have to go to our earlier contact reports, see Volume 1, 36th Contact on Monday, 20.10. 1975 P or 460 and the following and 38th Contact on Thursday, 13.11. 1975 P or 488 and the following and Volume 2, 44th Contact on Monday, 16.2. 1976 Pon 81 and the following. To find these because I know that these things were discussed between you and me officially. Over the last decades, however, Ashtar Sheran and his people have obviously changed to the positive and to the truthly truth in such a form that they were allowed to remain active on the Earth practically, in a reparation process or in a reparation mission, whereby the Pleiadians have made several of their own older ships available to them. Thus, people of the Ashtar Sheran group already came to the Earth again a long time ago, recently searched for contact here, and worked or work for a certain truth mission, which consists, among other things, of confirming your existence and my mission.
Contact Report 233.
And as for the name Ashtar, I refer to all the information that we already delivered to you several years ago for the public, from which it clearly and unambiguously follows that Ashtar Sheran has never had and still does not have those contacts with Earth humans that are ascribed to him by various liars and deceivers of the Earth. As for the inglorious role that he had played, this is known to you very well, and moreover his material existence expired, according to the terrestrial calendar in the year 1983, when he strove for things in the Tao universe that did not fall within his competence. Having fallen back into his former wrong and old conduct, he fled into the twin universe and attempted to seize power there over Asket's people, whereby his aircraft was destroyed and he lost his life. So he, as well as his spirit form, can in no way enter into contacts with Earth humans, for on the one hand, his body was completely eliminated by the destruction, while his spirit form has no possibility of returning from the twin universe to our universe or to break through the barriers, which are insurmountable to any spirit form of both buffering universes, in order to establish or maintain this kind of contact with the Earth humans. So all those lying and swindling Earth humans who maintain that they would have contact with Ashtar Sheran are already condemned by this fact.
Contact Report 236.
A residual group of the now dead Ashtar Sheran, who finally concluded his life in the Tao universe, felt obliged to be active as avengers of their former lord and master. And since they thought that they could avenge their dead master most impressively if they would nip the teaching of the truth on earth in the bud, they placed malicious, negative impulses in several of your friends, which made them become disloyal and enslaved to swindlers, deceivers, and liars, as in the case of Yoshi Kozakura and a few others.
Contact Report 257.
There are also many lies about Ashtar Sheran. Again and again, people come to us who still believe in the nonsense that he still transmits messages to Earth humans and plans to save his followers on Earth. People simply don't want to accept the truth that this Ashtar Sheran, as his real name was, who was misunderstood on Earth and transformed into Ashtar Sheran, was eliminated years ago in the Tao universe during his criminal fighting. Consequently, his spirit form and his whole block of consciousness are no longer in our Dern universe.
Lies, swindle, fraud, and delusions of all kinds, unfortunately very often have a very long lifespan. Therefore, it is not surprising that even the most incredible Ashtar Sheran stories still circulate as strongly as in former times. And it is not surprising that new delusional illnesses, liars, fraudsters, charlatans, and swindlers appear again and again in this regard, because with such untruthful things, a lot of money and other profits can be made on earth with believers who respond to them. A fact that also applies to the so-called UFO contacts, that is to say to the alleged contacts with extraterrestrials.
Contact Report 260.
Ashtar Sheran, that is to say Aruseak or Ashtar Sheran and whatever else this criminal called himself, was eliminated in the Tao universe during a serious battle as he was attacking a planet or something like that, as you've explained. Now, the question arose as to whether he is now incarnated again. Do you know something about this?
What you say is correct, but whether he is now reincarnated should be answered with a no. For in the regions where he lost his life, no overpopulation problems prevail on the planet. Therefore, it will still take a very long time before he will be arranged into a reincarnation. To our knowledge, 300 years will pass when I make my statements in accordance with the earthly calendar.
So other time relationships prevail there, whereby I have just alluded to the duration of a year.
That planet, in whose outer space Ashtar Sheran lost his life and in whose other-worldly space, in accordance with the valid creative regularities, his spirit form as well as entire consciousness block fix themselves, has an orbital period around the central star that corresponds to 486 days, according to the earthly standard. Moreover, a day has 27 hours and a little more than 36 minutes, measured by an earthly hour.
Contact Report 330.
and the Czech Republic a certain Ivo Benda works around, who, as I have been told, works around on the internet, and in books with my photos and writings as well as with all my material in general, and also claims that he is the reincarnation of Ashtar Sheran and is in contact with you. But now I know that all these claims are based on charlatanry, because first of all, you have no contact with any other human being on Earth apart from me, and secondly, Ashtar Sheran's spirit form cannot be reincarnated in an Earth human, because this guy died a few years ago in the Dal universe, and consequently, his spirit form cannot return to our Dern universe in terms of rebirth.
The facts of all things are as you say? And I would like to state quite clearly that I am not in any way in contact with this man, and that all his claims in this regard are untrue. You know that you are our only contact person on Earth in every respect, both telepathically and physically or in any other respect. The man's claims regarding his alleged rebirth as Ashtar Sheran can only be classified as untrue. There is probably nothing more to be explained in this matter, except that we are well acquainted with the man's wiles, as you very much trivialize his machinations.
Contact Report 452.
The faction of Ashtar Sheran, who for a very long time on the Earth tried to cause mischief again and again, and also were in alliance with the Giza intelligences.
Contact Report 563.
A certain Wilbert B. Smith was probably a contactee, but unfortunately, one of the negative kind. His contact was only a one-time and absolutely meaningless contact, and furthermore only a hypnotic direct contact with the group of the Ashtar Sheran, whereby the whole thing was, as already mentioned, effectively of an insignificant nature. As hypnotic direct contacts, we call those where the hypnosis is not performed independently by apparatuses, but directly by the human being, but where the hypnotic transmission of energy thanks to hypnosis over long distances is also performed by strong transmitting apparatuses. So Smith, like many other contact persons, was in contact under hypnosis with post-hypnotic aspect, and he did not act consciously and not of his own free will, as it was common practice in the Ashtar Sheran group to keep the contact persons are absolutely under control. And this was the case with all the numerous contacts who were abused by the Ashtar Sheran group. Such contacts with Earth humans were very often the case through the Ashtar Sheran group, whereby this group simply impulsively influenced Earth humans to make them willing tools for their dark machinations on Earth. These influencers were in great numbers, but none of the human beings ever had any idea what the actual reality of the contacts was and how they took place. In fact, they never had any real physical contact, but always only hypnotic impulsive contact, with real visions also being part of the whole, so that many of those contacts, who were abusively manipulated by the Ashtar Sheran group, were convinced that they had real contact with extraterrestrials. So they were not aware that they had no real encounters with the aliens in this sense. And consequently, they also had not flown in their flying apparatus, because in fact they were only pretended to have had real hypnotic visions. Through this hypnotic real vision illusion, the contactees were misled in such a way that they actually believed that they had real contacts with extraterrestrials and had flown with their flying apparatus. So they were no longer able to distinguish reality from the hypnotic illusion and lived or still live in the implanted delusion that their contacts were real. A further fact was that these contactees were hypnotically and suggestively given false data about the origin of the Ashtar Sheran group. Thus, practically all these contactees were reminded of different places of origin. But all these facts were unknown to us at the time when we gave you the list of these contactees, because at that time we only analyzed the memories of the people concerned. These were, however, so profoundly, hypnotically, and suggestively manipulated that we were deceived by them and therefore did not recognize the memory manipulation. We only found out the real facts 3 weeks ago, with better technical possibilities, which we now have at our disposal and which we have now used for the first time. In recent years, we have noticed things that seemed strange to us in various such contactees, which is why we used the new equipment and devices to reanalyze the memory impulses of all still living contact persons and were able to penetrate their hypnotic blockade. It must be said, however, that the persons forced into contact in this way are left with no conscious knowledge of their own, but only the post-hypnotic memory, which shortly after the manipulation became so strong that it could not be reversed. And this applies without exception to all those many Earth humans whom we have named individually or in lists as contact persons, and who, without exception, have been forcibly manipulated in a hypnotic, suggestive, revisionary way by the Ashtar Sheran group. In all cases, however, the impulses were such that the recipients of the impulses had false visions and thought that they had experienced contact, which is why they took notes, wrote books, and also made public statements. The reason for this was, on the one hand, that this was supposed to lead to a worldwide disinformation regarding the existence and origin of various extraterrestrials, while on the other hand it was also connected to a plan of the Ashtar Sheran group, which consisted of becoming a ruling power on Earth and finding a new home there. The plan was that this group would act as a kind of savior for the Earth's population against various evil alien invaders who were supposed to threaten Earth. For this purpose, a big spectacle with aerial battles and fights in Earth orbit was planned to make everything seem real. And this would finally have led to the Ashtar Sheran group taking over the rule of Earth as an extraterrestrial armada, so to speak. So all this was aimed at with the hypnotic contacts to Earth humans, and it was all to come about after official contacts with the Earth governments had been established. This could actually have been achieved by influencing certain Earth humans through impulses, which would also have included the rulers of all countries, who would have acted according to the impulses in such a way that the plans could have been realized. Since these persons, of whom there were a greater number, all failed and for reasons as yet unknown to us did not fulfill the orders placed in them, the evil plan did not come to pass. All the contactees, whom we also used to call by their names, were supposed to be the pathfinders for the realization of the plans of the Ashtar Sheran group. And since all these Earth humans were hypnotically and suggestively manipulated by the aliens of the Ashtar Sheran group, which we did not know at that time, we called them real contact persons. That was probably wrong of us, because we let ourselves be misled, which led to false assumptions on your part and also on the part of Earth humans, which resulted in the assumption that these contact persons with the Ashtar Sheran group had real physical or telepathic contact with any aliens. Of course, this was not true as we know today, but even then it seemed strange to us because we did not know any other group apart from the 3 groups unknown to us. So we assumed that these contact persons were connected to the 3 unknown people we did not know. So this misunderstanding was due to us, which we regret very much. And it should also be mentioned that this form of forced manipulative contacts had nothing to do with our impulse contacts, which we used to have with Earth humans, but for them, unconsciously, and in such a way that they assumed that their progressive ideas were their own. In particular, these impulse contacts from our side to scientists took place in order to promote the sciences of medicine and technology among Earth humans, which has also been proven by the very rapid developments in the last decades through many inventions and innovations, etc., as is actually the case. Our contacts were also such that the recipients of our impulse transmissions had no knowledge of the whole of the unconscious telepathic information impulses, the Ashtar Sheran group, which finally ended in the Dal universe. As you know, what was supposed to cause disaster on Earth, which would have happened if their manipulative machinations with the forcibly contacted Earth humans had been successful.
These are new findings again, which show many things in a new light.
That is so, but we are also not immune from mistakes and misguidance, not even in the mentioned relationship by the Ashtar Sheran group, which has been doing very bad things and has caused a lot of trouble regarding alleged physical and telepathic contacts with various extraterrestrials from allegedly different places of origin. As we have now been able to find out, their victims were hypnotically and visionarily duped into alleged physical contacts, as well as into alleged messages of Christian religious form. This, along with various other underhand machinations, which caused wrong assumptions and views in many Earth humans, even among civil servants and military personnel, etc. Also, for the sake of confusion, sightings with various kinds of flying apparatus were actually organized around the world, as well as strange acts of animal mutilation, etc., as well as by Earth humans who were impulsively hypnotized by the Ashtar Sheran group. We only found out about this through Asket, because she told us that during the fighting in the Dal universe, 4 prisoners were taken from the Ashtar Sheran group before their armada was completely destroyed. One of the 4 prisoners was the first representative of Ashtar Sheran and Armada commander. Recently he, like the 3 other prisoners, finally agreed to break the silence and reveal the many evil machinations of the group so that we could get to the bottom of it with their hypnosis contactees and find the truth. These prisoners also gave the names of various such false contactees who had already died, including one Wilbert B. Smith, as well as others in various countries in Europe, Africa, Japan, America, Israel, and South America, such as Brazil and Argentina, etc., but also Australia and Russia, etc.
I can understand that, but now the question arises whether the whole thing with the prisoners and your investigations have perhaps also led to findings with regard to the 3 groups unknown to you, and if so, which ones?
This was also clarified with the prisoners, and their statements make it absolutely clear that the Ashtar Sheran group had no connection whatsoever with the 3 groups unknown to us.
Contact Report 565.
So many observations, things, and strange occurrences can be traced back not only to the former Ashtar Sheran group, but also to these 4 groups?
It was never mentioned, but only that many events and occurrences could be attributed to this Sheran group, from the hypnotic forced contacts to all kinds of unpleasant happenings and strange occurrences.
What interests me now, during the first time of our contacts, your daughter Simya Ase talked a lot about the fact that various extraterrestrials come and go on Earth, and that they would also have contacts with Earth humans. How should this be understood now that you found out about the Ashtar Sheran group and were able to clarify the whole thing? Must Simyase's explanations now be connected with this?
That is indeed the case, yes, in every single relation of the names she told you, which according to our latest investigations were connected with the Ashtar Sheran group. These statements of my daughter are, of course, not connected with those telepathic impulse contacts which we had with Earth humans without their knowledge, nor with those which, intentionally or unintentionally, were made by us with Earth humans, such as the contact of my daughter Simya Se with a German named Elsa Schroeder in Persia near Zahedan, and with Petra and Anatol. Then the contact that took place in Bolivia, South America, with an extraterrestrial group from a space and time displaced area of Proxima Centauri between an Athar and Kohun and a man of German descent. And there may also have been contacts of various kinds between Earth humans and the four groups unknown to us, but we have no clear evidence of this, at least not to date. And what my daughter explained at that time when she talked about contacts with extraterrestrials mostly referred to the activities of the Ashtar Sheran group, but under certain circumstances, also incidents with the unknown groups could have been included. But we have not been able to clarify this until today.
Contact Report 567.
Accordingly, from the beginning, you also could not penetrate into the deeper consciousness, nor into the memory of those earthlings who you previously designated as contact people. So you did not find the actual truth, being that the human beings of the earth, who you designated as genuine contactees, were nothing more than those manipulated by the Ashtar Sheran group's hypnotic suggestion and real vision, and so forth, who had no conscious and genuine memories of alleged personal contacts and experiences with extraterrestrials, rather only suggested false memories.
Contact Report 568 readers a question. Once again, the Ashtar Sheran movement is also involved. The fact is that a good friend of mine lives absolutely by their rules and says that the Ashtar sect teaches that there are angels to guide you, that Earth is in ascension, and that those who really try to follow the Ashtar teachings are also saved, blah blah blah. These speeches are common in esotericism, but what does this really have to do with Ashtar Sheran? He is who was called a Rusik, already deceased, right? I know that the Pleeran know little about this community, but perhaps there is news. Billy answer. As far as Ashtar Sheran is concerned, it can be said in a nutshell that on the one hand it is known how the name of this extraterrestrial came into the earthly language area, where it has since been exploited esoterically and sectarian and misused by would-be media, which are supposedly powerful in channeling, for imagined messages. The alleged messages of all media, also the Kryan and Ashtar Sheran messages, are without exception nothing else but personal delusional, schizophrenic, or deliberately fraudulent machinations, because channeling, talking to the dead, etc., is absolute nonsense. But to Ashtar Sheran, who actually existed, whereby he first had an important mission, but from which he had fallen away and become a criminal. He had gathered a large armada around him and caused all kinds of mischief and inconsistencies, as well as that he himself, as well as his followers in bondage to him, hypnotically and suggestively influenced Earth humans and made them believe all kinds of nonsense. The name Ashtar Sheran was also suggestively implanted in Earthlings, who then, unaware of the truth of their suggestive hypnotic influence, turned it into an esoteric sectarian contact story and spread it, which has continued until today, and has found a large number of followers and believers. And this is still the case, although Ashtar Sheran was truly a criminal, and Ashtar Sheran was what his real name was. On Earth, the name was misunderstood and changed to Ashtar Sheran. But he, along with his whole band, was eliminated in the DAL universe years ago in criminal battles, so his spirit form is also no longer in our Dern universe. The worshippers and advocates of the figure of Ashtar Sheran on Earth are, like the Kryan community, a widespread sect spreading nonsense under the name Ashtar Command, whose members actually believe in an alien named Ashtar Sheran, who is said to be delivering valuable messages. Contrary to the truth that Ashtar Sheran or Rusik or alias Ashtar Sheran is said to come from a people called the Santinians, he prosecuted a completely different people. The Ashtar Sheran believers claim that he is supposed to have been working on Earth for a long time. The sect also represents the alleged interests of Ashtar Sheran, who is supposed to have been active on Earth for many decades. And this despite the fact that the Pleiran have been declaring for decades that he was eliminated in the DAL universe during hostilities, when he wanted to conquer a planet with his armada. In Germany, there is a Santine representation in Berlin. The Ashtar command goes back to the I Am movement, which was founded by a certain Guy Ballard as a theosophical community. The I Am movement, or Saint Germain Foundation, originated in America. Its founders and leaders, the mining engineer Guy Ballard (1878 to 1939) and his wife Edna, transformed theosophy, which originated in India, into an American theosophical doctrine of God's work. The leader of the Theosophists is said to have been contacted by so-called ascended masters. The alleged contact between the Ashtar Sheran command and Ashtar Sheran is said to have taken place by means of channeling, which corresponds to a pure schizophrenic imagination, in which a medium is supposed to receive a message. A well-known medium from this sect is called Tuella, which is said to come from the English-speaking world. The alleged messages of this medium, which is very active, are not only available in the English-speaking world, but also in Switzerland and Germany, etc. The whole of these sectarian messages is at the heart of the evacuation of humanity on Earth by over 17 million UFOs, which cannot be seen at the moment. The purpose of the evacuation is to bring the Earthlings, who believe in this nonsense, to a higher vibrational level, and thereby save them from the bitter end of time and humanity. According to the Ashtar command, Earth humans are to be taken to a paradise after their evacuation from Earth by the 17 million UFOs, and from then on are to be rejuvenated both mentally and physically, as was the case with the Heaven's Gate sect. In any case, the members of the Ashtar Sheran sect are lied to, deceived and misled. At present 144,000 light beings from the Santinians are said to live on Earth. Farewell to the 144,000 chosen ones, who are to be deposed and saved, as the Bible claims, with similar nonsense. If the alleged evacuation with UFOs is compared to the biblical rapture, an analogous story emerges, except that the saviors mentioned in the Bible have nothing to do with UFOs and Ashtar Sheran. According to the Ashtar command, thousands of Santinians are said to have incarnated on Earth, although not everyone is aware of this, so many of them will only later realize where they really came from. Although there is only the Earth in the whole solar system, which is inhabited by human beings and many other life forms, Ashtar command claims that the whole solar system is inhabited. This is scientifically already today a complete nonsense, whereby the whole thing reminds of the charlatanism of Georg Adamski with his human beings from Venus, as well as of Jakob Lorber, who described the huge gas planets as the habitat of human beings, etc. The Ashtar command also claims that the Earth must soon be transformed into a new plane of existence, that the whole solar system should be animated, as the Ashtar command claims, is an astronomical impossibility, as already every child capable of understanding and reason knows. But nevertheless the followers of Ashtar Sheran, who died long ago in the DAL universe, still maintain the idiotic nonsense of a SOL system, that is animated throughout. And what is more, the Santinians allegedly accuse the Earthlings of playing fast and loose with the Earth and its environment. Ashtar Sheran himself is hailed as the commander of love, who is also supposed to be the Son of Man announced by Jesus Christ. Of course, how could it be any other way with a stinking religious sect? Jesus Christ and the Archangel Michael are also supposed to be on you and you with the Santinians, and to work together with them. Through this cooperation, the evacuation of the Earthlings should also come about one day, which should also be ordered by God's personality. That the Ashtar command for the whole thing, probably to announce the evacuation, will use all the natural disasters and the evil worldly events to point out the future upheavals, is to be expected. Ashtar command promises peace, freedom and spiritual perfection for the future, based on the sex philosophy that all human beings can recognize themselves as Santinians incarnate on Earth. This nonsense is especially dangerous for unstable human beings, because it is especially such unstable people who, according to their faith, fall into such nonsense and become unthinkingly and abysmally in bondage to it. It is not only adults who are at risk, but also children who are confronted with all this bottomless and irresponsible nonsense, and also fall into this and the delusion that there is a real meaning behind everything. If they come to the idea of being an extraterrestrial human being themselves, perhaps a Santine, so that they have to join like-minded people and show similar sectarian behavior. Contact Report 724.
Ashtar Sheran, if I speak of this one first, was a criminal, yes, criminal, I would even like to say, who then lost his life in the Dal universe, and whose correct name was Ashtar Sheran, for which, however, I do not know the meaning. Ashtar Sheran, like the Giza intelligences, also belonged to the old split-off old Pleiadian splinter group, which had already departed to our Dern universe more than 22 million years ago, and was up to mischief in it. In particular, the Giza intelligences were in some respects malevolent elements, while Ashtar Sheran was also evil in other ways, spreading an impulse-driven delusion of belief about his person among the Earthlings. And the trick of the two groups, the Ashtar Sheran alias Ashtar Sheran and the Giza intelligences, was that they were only in our presence when they caused mischief, whereas they were resident in another space-time plane and only came into our presence temporarily. And as far as Ashtar Sheran alias Ashtar Sheran is concerned, as far as I know, he was never in our presence anyway, but worked on his confused believers on Earth from another space-time plane.